That's the truth buried deep within tonight's story on VT Animal Stories. It's not just about a dog and an old man. It's about what happens when grief hardens, when time forgets you, and when one unexpected bond becomes the last light in the dark. This video holds a powerful life lesson, one you'll want to carry with you long after it ends. So please, watch until the very last frame. Leave a comment. Subscribe if you believe stories like these deserve to be heard, and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. That small gesture is a great source of strength for this channel to keep creating meaningful and moving content. Hey guys, tonight we witness a betrayal so public, so cruel, it could have broken anyone. The restaurant was quiet at first. Soft jazz, polished silver, champagne flutes catching candlelight. You were surrounded by people you call family, celebrating your daughter's college graduation. You raised your glass, proud and teary-eyed. But then, he stood up, the husband you had loved for 28 years. His voice was steady. "I won't pretend anymore," he said. And just like that, the silence fell, in front of your daughter, in front of the world. He left you there with a smile on his face and the dessert still untouched. After 28 years of marriage, he dumped her in front of their daughter. But what happened next? So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe pour a glass of wine, and let's step into tonight's story together. The rain sounds different when it's hitting an old tin roof. It doesn't rush or hammer. It lingers, like it's thinking about staying. You sit by the window with your coffee, black and quiet, just like every other morning. The trees outside sway like slow dancers, and somewhere in the distance, a raven calls twice. That's how you count time these days, not in minutes or hours, but in sounds. Your name is Ethan Rowe. You're 74 years old. You don't say that aloud often, but you feel it in your knees and in the way people look through you at the grocery store. No one means harm. It's just that the world has moved on to louder things, brighter things. You, meanwhile, have chosen stillness. A cabin tucked by a lake in Oregon, a porch that creaks under your boots, an old percolator that still does its job. Unlike most things from your past, you talk less now. The last real conversation you had was 3 winters ago, with a stranger at a gas station. He asked if you were the fireman who lost his son. You nodded. He said sorry and walked away. You never asked his name. You weren't always like this. Once, you were fire in command and survival, Marine Corps, squad leader, then 30 years with the fire department. You were the first in and the last out, but you couldn't outrun the one call that changed everything. One knock on the door, one folded flag, one line read from a letter that began with "We regret to inform you." And that was it. So now, you make your coffee, you split your firewood, you stare at the woods, and you wait for nothing until the night the storm came. It was the kind of rain that makes the trees moan, the kind that blurs the lines between sky and ground. You heard it before you saw it, a low, deliberate thump on the porch. Not the wind, not a branch, something heavier. You opened the door without a word. There he was, a shadow. Not a stray. Not really. You can tell the difference. Strays look lost. This one looked like it knew exactly where it was, and maybe didn't care. Malinois, you thought immediately. You know the breed. Lean frame, deep eyes. Too still for a domestic dog. Trained. Or broken. Maybe both. It didn't growl. Didn't wag. Just stared at you, rain dripping off its muzzle, chest heaving from the cold. You stared back. After a moment, you stepped aside, not to invite, just to show you weren't a threat. It didn't move. "Fine," you said in your mind. "Suit yourself." You set a clean towel near the door, a bowl of water beside it. Close the door. You didn't latch it. That night, you couldn't sleep. You lay awake, listening to the rain, then to the silence when it finally stopped. You tried not to check the window, but your eyes betrayed you around 3 in the morning. The dog hadn't left. It was curled up beside the steps, nose tucked into its side, one ear still alert. Something about that made your chest tighten. You told yourself not to get involved. It's a wild dog, maybe even dangerous. Someone else's responsibility. But the next morning, you found yourself setting out food. Not too close. Not too warm. Just enough. It didn't eat. It didn't come closer. But it stayed. 3 days passed. Then 5. The dog didn't bark. Didn't approach. But every night, it lay at your porch like a soldier on watch. You didn't name it. You didn't call. But each time you opened your door, it looked up at you with the same calm, unreadable gaze. You thought of your son, of the time he came home with a rescue mutt from base, and swore it understood everything. You told him dogs didn't feel the way humans do. But this one made you doubt that. On the 7th day, you did something you hadn't done in almost 20 years. You opened the bottom drawer of your closet. Inside, a metal box. Inside that box, your old field whistle. You held it like it might burn you. Then you walked to the porch, looked down at the dog, and blew. A sharp, crisp note. The dog stood instantly, not startled. Ready. It moved to your side with precise steps and sat at your heel like it had always been there. You stared at it. It stared ahead. No wag. No bark. Just presence. You whispered, almost against your will. You're one of us, aren't you? It didn't answer. But it didn't need to. That night, you left the door open. It didn't come inside. But it slept right at the threshold, head resting across the line between your world and the one it came from. You didn't lock the door. And for the first time in years, you slept through the night. You don't name him, not yet. Something about naming feels too personal, too final, like drawing a line around something that was never meant to stay. But he stays. Each morning you wake up, he's there, coiled on the porch like he belongs to the wood and the silence. Each night, he lies just outside the open door, never asking to come in, never pushing an invisible line between man and animal. He doesn't want warmth. He wants presence. And in some strange way, that makes you trust him more. On the 10th morning, you toss a ball. Nothing special, just a weathered tennis ball you find near the shed. He doesn't chase it, doesn't move, just watches where it lands in the tall grass, then looks back at you. You almost laugh. It's not rejection, it's restraint. This isn't a house pet. This is a soldier, waiting for a command you haven't remembered how to give. That same afternoon, you pull the whistle from your coat pocket again. You hold it between your fingers, thumb tracing the grooves. Then, with a low breath, you send a single sharp tone across the yard. He stands immediately. You try again, 2 short bursts, then a point to the left. He moves, swift, focused, as if the years between now and his last handler had never passed. You watch him circle, pause, lower his body in perfect stance. Your breath catches. That movement, it's in your memory. Field drills, debris search, a collapsed building and the dog they've flown in from Belgium, sharp as a blade and twice as fast. You'd seen it once, 25 years ago. Same posture, same eyes. You swallow hard. He's not a stray. He's not lost. He's trained. You sit on the porch, elbows on your knees, and let your hands fall loose between them. He walks over slowly, then lowers his body beside your boot, still not touching you, but closer than ever. You finally say it, low and even, "Shadow." He doesn't react, not a twitch, not a blink. But you say it again, "Shadow." He exhales, just once, like the wind settling after a storm. From that day on, he responds to the name. You never tell anyone why you chose it. Maybe because he came with the rain. Maybe because he walks like a ghost beside you, never ahead, never behind. Maybe because that's what you've been all these years, too, a shadow of yourself. You fall into a rhythm, days marked not by news or dates, but by routine. You rise before dawn, coffee in hand. You sit beside the window while Shadow takes silent rounds of property. Then you walk the trail together, the old loop you cleared after your son passed. 1 mile down to the lake, 1 mile back. You speak sometimes. Not much, just enough, too warm for October. He glances at you, smells like snow. He lifts his nose. It's strange how much silence can hold. At night, He rests just inside now, not on the furniture, never at your feet, but at the base of the door, like a sentinel. You leave the door unlatched, still, not out of habit anymore, but out of trust. You begin to clean the house. Not just surface clean, but really clean. You dust shelves that hadn't been touched in 5 winters. You empty the box of unopened letters. You oil the hinges on the bedroom door that always stuck when your son came home for the holidays. You find yourself cooking real meals again, knocking soup and toast. Actual meals, meat, rice, eggs. He eats when you eat. Doesn't beg, doesn't stare, just waits. Sometimes you catch yourself speaking aloud, not to him, but because it feels normal again. You tell stories. About fire calls. About your wife's lasagna. About the first time you crashed a truck on icy roads and blamed it on the dog you didn't yet have. You laugh at that one. Shadow does not. He merely blinks. Fair. One evening, you light a fire outside. A proper one. Logs stacked high, crackling, popping. You sit beside it, back against the old pine bench, legs stretched. Shadow lies beside you. The stars are out. The lake's surface reflects them in tiny trembles. You tilt your head and say, "Do you think they remember us?" He doesn't respond. Of course not. But you do. You think of your son's last call. How he promised to bring home a dog from base when he finished deployment. Said he wanted a companion. Someone to run with on trails. Someone that didn't care whether he was quiet or loud. You didn't know then what to say. You've been too afraid of dogs, too afraid of connection, too afraid of watching something die. So you said, "Let's talk about it when you're back." He never came back. You blink hard at the fire. It doesn't burn your eyes. The past does. Shadow shifts beside you, resting his chin near your boot. He lets out a long breath. You whisper, "He would have liked you." Another breath. You almost feel like someone's listening. Then movement. Shadow lifts his head, ears stiff. He stands, walks to the edge of the firelight. A growl. Low. Focused. You rise too. Instinct returns, slow but sharp. There, across the field, movement. A shape staggering near the trailhead. Human. Limping. You whistle once. Shadow bolts. You follow as best you can. When you reach the boy, he's collapsed against a tree, bleeding from the leg, breath short and sharp. Shadow sits beside him, unmoving. You kneel. "You all right, kid?" The boy barely nods. A gash across his thigh. Deep but not fatal. You radio in a call. Old habits die hard. Within 20 minutes, the ambulance arrives. You ride along. Shadow rides too, though no one asks permission. At the hospital, while the boy's parents arrive, a nurse comes to thank you. You shrug, but then she says the boy's name, and it stops you cold. You know that name, that last name. You whisper, "Timothy LeClaire?" The nurse nods. Your breath shudders. He's the son of your squad mate, the man who died beside your boy. 2 fathers, 2 coffins, 1 war. You look down at Shadow. He doesn't look up, just sits. The boy's mother rushes in, tears streaking her cheeks. She sees you, stops. Then, slowly, she steps forward and hugs you. Not because you knew her, but because somehow, through time and silence and something beyond logic, you brought her son home. Later that night, you sit with Shadow on the porch. You pour 2 cups of coffee, place one near your feet. You don't say anything. You just sit, and for the first time in a long, long while, you don't feel like a ghost anymore. The mornings feel different now. It's not that the sun rises any earlier, or that the air smells less like pine and more like thaw. It's something quieter. Less about weather, more about weight. Shadow walks beside you, not behind, not ahead. There's rhythm now. 2 sets of steps on gravel, matched like breath and heartbeat. You stop noticing the sounds of your boots because they become background to something more constant, companionship. One afternoon, as you carry a fresh stack of wood from the shed, a voice calls from the edge of the trail. You turn. It's the boy, Timothy. Crutches. A soft brace around his thigh, but upright. His mother walks behind him, slower. You set down the wood, not because you have to, but because in this moment, Presence matters more than chores. The mother introduces herself, though she doesn't need to. You know her eyes. You saw them once in a waiting room, 25 years ago, across from yours, both of you holding coffee cups too tightly and praying for sons who didn't come back. But hers did. Now, I think he remembers you, she says gently, glancing down at Shadow. The boy kneels slowly, offers his hand. Shadow steps forward, lowers his head, and rests it on Timothy's knee. It's a gesture so deliberate, so human, it makes your chest ache. The mother exhales. Thank you, she whispers, and though she says it to you, her eyes are on Shadow. That night, you take out an old wooden crate from the attic. Inside, medals, folded flags, a sealed envelope addressed to you from your son. You'd never opened it. It came home with his things, taped to the inside of his duffel bag. You couldn't bear it back then. Couldn't hear his voice in your head, and read his goodbye at the same time. But now, maybe you've waited long enough. You sit at the kitchen table. The envelope feels heavier than it should. Your hands shake more than they used to. Shadow sits nearby, ears alert, as if sensing you're about to do something sacred. You open it. The letter is short, his handwriting neat, deliberate. Dad, if you're reading this, I didn't make it back. And if I didn't, I want you to remember one thing. You don't have to be the strong one every time. You don't have to stay quiet just because pain makes noise. And you don't have to live alone just because the world doesn't understand you anymore. There's still good here. Still people who need you. Still someone, maybe not me, who will sit beside you and not expect you to say anything. Let them. Love you. Nate. You fold the letter with slow hands. You don't cry. Not this time. Instead, you pour a cup of coffee. You take a second cup and pour that too. Set it across the table. Let the steam rise in silence. Shadow lifts his head. And you say, quietly, with a voice made of gravel and grace, good letter, wasn't it? In the following weeks, things begin to change. You don't force it, but people start coming by. At first, it's Timothy and his mother, bringing old dog blankets and cans of food. Then it's the mailman, asking if you'd be willing to look after a dog found wandering near the creek. Then a woman from town, with eyes tired from grief, holding the leash of a shepherd that won't eat since its owner passed away. You don't say yes. You just leave the door open. And they come. Not dozens. Not right away. But enough. You call it nothing. No signs, no nameplate. Just a porch with clean water, a basket of tennis balls, and Shadow, always lying at the edge, watching, accepting, not judging. Some dogs stay a few days, some longer. Some arrive afraid of everything. Thunder, boots, raised voices. You don't talk much, but you walk them. You sit beside them when they eat. You leave a light on when storms roll in. People start calling it the silent station. You pretend not to like the name, but truthfully it fits. You once were a man who carried axes and pulled people from fire. Now you carry softness. You pull silence from those too scared to speak. And in a strange way, this job, this quiet tending to the broken, is heavier than the one you left behind. One evening, you sit on the porch with a man named Lou, a former paramedic who lost his partner in a crash. He doesn't say much, just stares at the horizon while petting a trembling terrier on his lap. After a long pause, he says, I thought I was done. You nod. He looks over at Shadow. But that dog, he makes me think maybe I'm not. You take a breath, then answer, me too. And that's enough. You don't need ceremonies. You don't need certificates or speeches. You just need mornings. Coffee, fresh snow, a dog pressing its head into your hand and saying, without words, that you matter. There's an afternoon when you're stacking firewood, and pause to look at Shadow. He's slower now. Not much. But you notice he used to leap the porch steps in one motion. Now he takes them carefully, like the wood might shift under him. His eyes are still sharp, but the fur around him is lighter. You feel the time pressing in. Not urgently, just honestly. So you write a letter to the old K9 training facility, now just a nonprofit, with a forwarding address. You write with a pen, not a keyboard, ink smudging slightly beneath your thumb. If you still have dogs that were trained and left behind, send them here. One of them saved me. I'd like to return the favor. Ethan Rowe. You seal it, place on the kitchen table, and whisper, "You think they'll listen?" Shadow thumps his tail once. That night, you leave the porch light on a little longer than usual. And for the first time in a long time, you dream of a trail that doesn't end in silence. They do listen. 3 weeks after you send the letter, a box truck pulls into your gravel drive. Not flashy, no logo, just a hum of tires and a driver with tired eyes and a clipboard. He doesn't say much. You appreciate that. They said you'd take him, he mumbles, sliding open the back. Inside, 5 crates, 5 pairs of eyes, some alert, some afraid, some just waiting. You open the first crate slowly. A Doberman, male, older, gray along the muzzle. You say nothing. Just step back and let him decide. He steps out cautiously, circles once, then lies down right beside Shadow, who doesn't move, doesn't even glance. He just lets it happen. The other dogs follow. One limps. One growls at the wind. One stares at the trees like she's remembering a life she's not sure existed. You don't ask for their names. You learn them by presence. You build out the shed, turn it into a sleeping space. Add blankets, install heaters, leave bowls of fresh water in every corner. The town hears about it before you're ready. But somehow it feels right. No interviews. No visitors unless they come with silence and patience. You call it Tram Tin Lang when you speak to yourself. Just that. No translation needed. One morning, a woman shows up at your gate. Late 50s. Neat coat. Worn hands. Her eyes don't scan the property like a visitor. They settle. She introduces herself as Helen. Says her husband was a military vet. Passed away last spring. Left behind a dog named Leo that no one could manage. She asks if you might take him. You don't answer right away. Instead, you ask her a question most people avoid. Was he close with your husband? She nods. They went everywhere together. Leo hasn't barked once since the funeral. Just waits at the door every night. You nod. I'll take him. When she brings Leo 2 days later, she doesn't cry until she sees Shadow. He looks just like ours, she whispers. Leo adjusts quickly, not because you train him, but because he finds his place. It's strange, you think, how grief changes shape when shared. It becomes quieter, more bearable, like 2 soldiers leaning against each other during a long march. You find yourself talking to Shadow more now, out loud, not in whispers. Leo likes the old blanket. Huh. Gail chewed my boot again. You think the snow's gonna stick? He responds with looks, with movement, sometimes just with presence. But one day, he doesn't come to your chair after breakfast. He lies near the shed instead. You let him, but that evening he struggles to stand. Just once, just enough for you to notice. You walk to him, crouch beside his frame. You press your hand to his chest, steady but slower. You feel the years, not just his, but yours too. He lifts his head, nudges your wrist. It's not pain, it's knowing. That night, you don't sleep in your bed. You sleep beside him, on the porch, wrapped in the old military blanket. The one you thought you'd throw away every fall, but never did. And in the middle of the night, when a cold wind slips between the slats, you feel him press his body closer, not seeking warmth, giving it. You close your eyes and murmur, if I had met you 20 years earlier, I might have lived differently. The next morning he's slower, but he rises, walks beside you again. No leash, no commands, just loyalty. You decide to write something, not for the newspaper, not for the town. For him, a letter, not to send, just to say. You begin. Shadow, you weren't supposed to stay, but you did. You weren't supposed to heal me, but you did. You weren't supposed to be my second chance, but somehow you are. You fold the paper, tuck it into a small tin box, and bury it beneath the pine tree where you first lay that rainy night. In the following days, something shifts. You start noticing the sky again, not just the clouds, but the way light changes on the lake around in the afternoon. You find yourself humming old songs, melodies without words, and every evening you walk past the pine tree, place your hand on the bark, and whisper, "Still here." You don't expect an answer, but sometimes Shadow lifts his head, just enough to let you know he is too. 1 week later, a woman visits with her grandson, says the boy's been quiet since his dad was deployed, scared of loud sounds, doesn't talk much, but he likes dogs. You introduce him to Gale, the smallest of the pack, jumpy but affectionate. The boy doesn't speak, just sits down cross-legged in the grass. Gale crawls into his lap, sighs, and falls asleep. The boy smiles. It's the only thing he does all day, but it's enough. The grandmother cries behind her sunglasses. You say nothing. You don't need to. That night, you sit with Shadow again. Pour 2 cups of coffee. The steam swirls in the porch light like something holy. You sip your cup, then lift his bowl gently, place it by your side. He drinks. Slow, measured. You whisper, "You did good today." He doesn't move. But in that stillness, you hear the answer anyway. It happens on a Tuesday. You don't expect much from Tuesdays. They usually pass without meaning. Neither the start of anything, nor the end. Just a middle. But this one brings something old back to the surface. You're clearing out the loft above the shed, looking for the winter tarp. Shadow lies below on the grass, soaking in the last of the sun like it's a quiet ritual. The other dogs nap in a half circle, distant but near. Safe. You move a box you haven't touched in over 10 years. Inside, an old duffel bag. Faded canvas. Heavy zipper. Dog tags attached to the handle. The same bag your son used to pack for deployment. The one the military sent back after he didn't return. Your hands hesitate. You sit on the floor. The air is thick with the smell of cedar, rust, and memory. Inside the bag, neatly folded fatigues, a worn photograph of the two of you on a fishing trip when he was 12, and a notebook you didn't know existed. You flip through the pages. Training notes. Sketches of his bunkmates. A doodle of a dog, lanky, big ears, labeled Juno. Then a letter, unsealed, addressed to Dad. Your fingers tremble. You begin reading. If you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it, but I want you to know I didn't go out scared. I went out knowing I tried to do something that mattered, and I hoped you'd understand that. I hope one day, maybe you'd forgive me for leaving the way I did, and maybe, just maybe, you'd let someone else in again. You always loved dogs, Dad, even if you pretended not to. Maybe you'd find one someday that's too stubborn to leave you alone. If you do, don't shut him out. He might be the only one who knows what to do with all that silence you carry. You stop reading. You don't need to finish it. You fold the letter carefully, place in your coat pocket, not to hide it, but to keep it close. You look down from the loft. Shadow's eyes are on you. He hasn't moved, just watching, waiting. You descend slowly. Sit beside him. You say nothing, but he leans against your leg. And that's all the conversation you need. Later that day, you receive a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photograph. Black and white. Blurry. A military dog standing beside a group of soldiers. You recognize the handler. It's your son. On the back of the photo, a scribbled note. They called him Ghost. Fast. Loyal. Quiet. Just like someone I know. No signature. You wonder who sent it. But more than that, you wonder if Shadow had a name before this life. A number. A handler. A mission. You'll never know for sure. But sometimes, the not knowing carries more grace than answers ever could. That night, after feeding the dogs, you walked the pine tree, the one where you buried the first letter. The bark's darker now from winter rain. You crouch down, press your palm flat against the earth. You whisper, "I'm sorry it took me so long." Behind you, you hear the creak of old joints. Shadow's joined you. He lies beside you in the grass, like he did the night he arrived. For a while, the two of you sit in silence. Then a breeze picks up. just enough to move the pine needles, just enough to carry your voice back toward the lake. You stand, stretch your back slowly, and look down. Shadow is still lying there, but his eyes are closed, not in sleep, in peace. You kneel beside him, touch his side, still warm, still here, but you feel it, something in the air, a shift, like the forest holding its breath. You sit with him until the stars come out, and then longer. The next morning, you make coffee. You pour 2 cups, set one beside your own on the table. You wait. Shadow doesn't come. You don't call. Instead, you walk out to the pine, and you dig, not with tools, with your hands. You want to feel it, the cold, the weight, the truth. You place him in the earth gently, wrapped in the military blanket. Beside him, you bury the tin box with the letter. No markers, no stone, just a carved piece of what you sanded yourself. You burn the words into the surface. He didn't bark often, but when he did, he saved a life. You sit on the porch that evening. The dogs gathered around you, quiet, respectful. You hold your coffee like it's the only thing keeping your hands from shaking. You look at the path he used to take every evening before dusk, and you wait for the sound to pause. But there's only wind. Still, you whisper, I'll leave the door open, because part of you believes he'll find his way back. You keep the porch light on for 3 nights straight. It's not rational. You know that. But grief rarely listens to reason. You just need to believe that if anything ever did find its way back to the woods, through the dark, through whatever veil separates then from now, it would see the light and know. The other dogs sense it. They move softer, sleep closer together. Even the jumpy ones lie still at dusk, eyes cast toward the pine tree. There is something in the air, like the house itself is holding its breath. You move slower, too, not because your body aches more, though it does, but because your mind is heavier. You linger over your coffee, sit longer with your hand resting on the old wooden rail. Listen harder, even when there's nothing to hear. On the 4th night, it storms. Not a summer storm, clean and dramatic, but a cold, early winter one, the kind that carries ice and wind, like tiny needles flung through the dark. You almost don't hear it over the rain, but you do. A knock, not on the door, on the fence. 3 short taps. You rise slowly. The dogs do not bark. You open the door, step out, rain soaking your shoulders before you reach the gate. There, on the other side, is a boy, no older than 12, soaked, shaking. Behind him, no car, no bike, just a backpack and a leash. He doesn't speak, just holds the end of the leash up with both hands like an offering. At the other end stands a dog, thin, shivering, white scars down one flank, but standing. The boy whispers, barely audible under the rain. They said you take the ones no one else wants. You open the gate. That night, you make them soup. The boy eats quietly, glancing at the fireplace. The dog doesn't eat until he's sure the boy is full, then curls up at his feet, head resting on one shoe like a pillow. You let them stay. No questions. But when the boy is asleep, curled on the old cot by the wood stove, you kneel beside the dog and gently run your hand down its back. It flinches but doesn't move away. You whisper, I don't know where you came from, but you're home now. The next morning, the boy is gone, left before dawn. Left a note on the kitchen table. Thank you. I couldn't keep him anymore. My mom's boyfriend was going to sell him, but I know he's safe with you. His name is Hunter. You don't try to find him. The note doesn't have a return address. Just a tear-stained corner, and handwriting too careful for a child that age. Hunter doesn't leave the porch for 2 days. But on the 3rd, he joins the others for their morning walk. Doesn't bark, doesn't run, just follows, a quiet shadow among quiet ghosts. You realize something that day. You built something you never planned for. A place not just for healing, but for remembering and for continuing. The town starts sending more. Not just dogs, but people. Old men with stories they never told their sons. Women who outlived their children. Veterans, widows, kids, all of them carry something heavy. All of them find something lighter in the space you've made. You don't become a hero. You just remain. You fix the roof, feed the dogs, chop wood, leave the door open. One day, you're sitting by the fire, watching the snowfall begin through the window. A knock on the door. This time, not timid, not desperate. You open it. It's Helen, the woman who brought Leo. She holds a tin of cookies in one hand, a letter in the other. "I thought you should have this," she says, handing over the envelope. "It came in the mail this morning, from a government office." You open it. It's from the Department of Veteran Affairs. A formal notice. Someone filed an application on your behalf. It states that your unofficial care facility has been nominated for recognition, not for awards, but for partnership, for potential funding, for impact. You don't speak. She sees a hesitation in your face and says, "It wasn't about recognition. It's about making sure you can keep doing this." For them, she gestures toward the yard. Dozens of paw prints in the snow. You nod once. Take the letter. Fold it. Place it on the mantel. Later that evening, you sit outside as the snow thickens. You hear footsteps, then feel it. Something warm and heavy leaning against your side. It's not Shadow, but it's close. It's Hunter. He doesn't look up, just rests his head against your leg. Sighs deep. You place your hand on his neck, gentle. The pine tree stands silent behind you, outlined in white. You whisper, "I thought I couldn't do this without him." Hunter stays still. Snow gathers on your boots, your shoulders, the brim of your hat, but you don't move, because sometimes love returns in different forms, not to replace, but to remind. And tonight, under the quiet weight of snow and memory, you remember what you told yourself when you handed that boy the leash. That envelope wasn't just paper. It was freedom. The envelope sits untouched on the mantel for 3 days. You don't open it again, not because you're ignoring it, but because some things take time. Time to feel real. Time to belong. You go about your mornings the same way. Chop wood, boil coffee, feed the dogs, walk the trail. Hunter still stays close. Too close sometimes, his shoulder brushing yours, his eyes always watching your hands, your breath. Like he's afraid the moment he looks away, you'll vanish. You understand that kind of fear. You felt it too, once. The dogs grow into a rhythm, each one carving out a space in your daily patterns. You no longer sleep with the porch light on, but you do light the stove a little earlier, as if warmth now is a welcome, not a signal. One afternoon, as you're stacking logs near the back fence, a young woman arrives. She's dressed plainly, oversized coat, a scarf that's been mended at least twice. She introduces herself as Margie, says she's from a nonprofit up north. Someone forwarded them your story. She doesn't ask questions at first, just watches. Then, after a long pause, she says, "Did you ever plan to start this place?" You shake your head. "No, I just left the door open." She smiles, soft and sad. That's how the best things begin. She returns 2 weeks later, with papers, forms, letters of support, recommendations from the community. She sits at your kitchen table, pours her own coffee, and says, "We can make this official. If you want, you'd still run it your way. Quiet, but with help." You look around the room. The marks on the floor where paws have scraped over time. The chewed corner of the couch you never replaced. The boot tray filled with mismatched shoes. And the silence, still warm, still intact. You nod. "All right." She smiles again, this time a little lighter. "Good. We already picked a name." You raise an eyebrow. "Oh." She opens a folder. Inside, a certificate mock-up. Across the top, "The Shadow Haven, a sanctuary for working dogs and quiet souls." Your breath catches. You don't speak for a long time. Then you stand, walk to the pine tree, and press your hand to the trunk. "He like that?" You whisper. Margie doesn't hear you, but Hunter does. He pads over, sits beside you, and gazes up at the branches. That night, you finally open the envelope. Inside is a formal approval from the Veterans Animal Trust. They're offering a monthly stipend, Small, but enough. A note is stapled to the back. Handwritten. What you're doing is more than rescue. It's remembrance. It's continuation. Keep going. You don't cry. You do, however, place the letter beside your son's. Same drawer. Same care. Weeks pass. The house hums with quiet purpose. Margie visits often now, not to manage, but to share stories. She brings books, old dog beds, extra blankets. Once, she even brings a battered cassette player. I thought you might like to hear something besides silence, she says. You chuckle. I like silence. I know, she says, but sometimes music helps us remember that we're still alive. She plays an old tape, instrumental guitar, soft and slow. You sit on the porch that night, music drifting behind you. Hunter rests his head in your lap. You stroke his fur and think of all the ways silence can carry sound. Footsteps on gravel, breath during sleep, the gentle clink of a collar against wood. The next morning, you find a package on your doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside, a small wooden box. Carved on top, a silhouette of a dog. Malinois, strong, alert. Inside the box, his collar. Shadows. You know it instantly. The same leather. The same wear marks. The tiny scratch on the brass nameplate. You hold it in both hands. Fingers trembling. There's a note inside, folded once. Thought you might want this back. We didn't know where else to send it. But somehow, we figured you'd be the one who'd remember. No name. Just that. You sit on the floor for a long time. Then you walk outside, collar in hand. The dogs circle you gently. You kneel beside the pine tree. Hang the collar from a low branch. It sways in the wind, catching the sunlight just enough to glint. You whisper, "You never really left, did you?" A soft breeze answers. Later, as dusk settles, you light a candle on the windowsill. Not for grief, for gratitude. The house is quiet, but not empty. And you are full. That night, Margie brings over a guest, an older man, late 60s, eyes kind but cautious. She says he lost his partner recently. Human or canine, you ask. He smiles and answers, both. You nod. You don't ask for stories, but you offer coffee and space. The man stays for dinner. By morning, he's outside throwing sticks for Leo, laughing louder than anyone has in that yard for weeks. Before he leaves, he turns to you and says, "I thought I was too late to find something good again." You reply, "It's never too late if you keep the door open." He looks over at the dogs and says, "Then maybe I'll leave mine open too." You nod once and smile. That night, you place a new sign at the front gate. Simple, wooden, burned by hand. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are not forgotten. And beneath it, just one word. Welcome. The first real snow of the season comes overnight. You wake to stillness, the kind that holds its breath before the world begins again. Through the window, the trees were white like solemn shoulders draped in memory. The porch, the fence line, the path to the lake, all softened, all hushed. You rise slowly, bones reluctant but willing. The coffee brews as it always does. That old metal kettle sighs just like you, its breath rising into the quiet cabin air. You pour 2 mugs, because your hands remember the motion. One for you, one for the silence. You set the second cup down across the table, on the worn wood where Shadow once rested his chin. You don't expect anything, but the ritual matters. Some mornings, that's all you have, ritual and breath, and snow that doesn't ask you to explain anything. The dogs don't stir until later. They've learned the grace of slow mornings, of warmth before motion. You open the door, and they step into snow without sound, paws pressing soft indentations into fresh layer, like signatures only the forest understands. Hunter lingers at your side. He's bigger now, stronger, still cautious, but no longer afraid. You walk to the pine tree with him. The collar still hangs there, gently swinging in the morning breeze, dusted with snow like a crown. You place your hand on the trunk. The bark feels like memory, rough but real, and then you walk the path you always do. down past the lake, up toward the ridge. Hunter beside you, and sometimes another one or two. Quiet company, never too close, never far behind. You pass the old wooden bench. You sit. From here, the trees stretch wide and endless, their tips meeting the pale sky like hands clasped in prayer. The snow falls soft. You can hear it landing on your coat, on your boots, on the letters you carry inside your chest that were never written, but always felt. You think about your son, about the letter he left, about the one you wrote back, but never mailed. You wonder, for a moment, if somehow, across time, across whatever distance holds a gone from the living, he hears you now. You don't speak the words aloud, but you feel them, and it's enough. When you return to the house, the porch is dusted fresh. A new set of paw prints meets you at the steps, smaller, lighter. You look up and see a golden mutt curled in the corner, shivering gently, eyes watching yours with a kind of pleading that needs no voice. You kneel. "Hey there," you whisper. The dog inches forward. Not much, just enough. Behind you, Hunter watches, then walks over, sits quietly beside the stranger. That's all the permission you need. You open the door, let them both in. You dry the new one off, offer food, a blanket, no questions. And when you return to your chair, you find the stranger curled in Shadow's old spot. No hesitation, no challenge, just trust. You sip your coffee. Cold now, but familiar. You glance out the window. Snow still falls. Lightly, patiently. Later that evening, you fold laundry. Not much, just a few worn shirts, a sweater or two, a blanket the dogs keep dragging into the hallway. You hum an old tune, one you can't name. You set the folded blanket in the cedar chest. Close it gently. Then you open the door and step outside once more. The moon is up. The air is clean and sharp. You stand on the porch, hands in your coat pockets, eyes tracing the trail of paw prints that wind through the yard. You think of all the arrivals, all the quiet goodbyes, all the ones who stayed and the ones who left healed. You think of the nights you couldn't sleep and the mornings you didn't want to wake, and how, somehow, all of that brought you here. Not back to who you were, but into who you were meant to become. A man who leaves the door open. A man who knows silence is not emptiness. A man who no longer waits to be found, but instead finds. You take a deep breath. Cold air, pine, smoke from the old chimney, and something else. Peace. It does not arrive loudly. It does not knock. It simply stays. And as you turn back toward the house, snow brushing your shoulders like a blessing, you know. In the silence you left behind, you didn't just rebuild. You rose. In the end, it wasn't about saving a dog, and it wasn't about healing a man. It was about what happens when two broken things decide not to give up on each other. As Maya Angelou once said, people forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. If this story stirred something in you, grief, hope, memory, peace, then don't let it sit in silence. Share it. Leave a comment. Subscribe to VT Animal Stories. We are still growing, still small, but every new subscriber brings us closer to our first 1,000, a milestone that means everything. It means these quiet stories, these reminders that life always finds a way back in, will continue to reach the people who need them. Thank you for walking this path with us. And remember, sometimes leaving the door open is all it takes for grace to walk in